Welcome to today's Nicaragua webinar entitled Building Sustainable Communities, Insights from Nicaragua. My name is Barbara Larkham, and I'm one of your co-moderators today, along with Nan McCurdy. We'll hear from our speaker, Sarah Junkin Woodard, in a few minutes, but first we have a few other comments and announcements. We want to thank Yoav Elenevsky for providing technical support today, and we also thank our many organizational co-sponsors who will be listed now in the chat. You'll see several buttons available at the bottom of your screen. One button is for closed captions labeled CC. Just click on that to turn it on. Also, feel free to use the chat function to offer comments throughout this event, but we have a new announcement and request about the chat. In order to keep the chat working in service of the webinar, we ask you to use it in respectful ways that don't distract from the program. Demeaning comments about an attendee, speaker, or moderator will not be tolerated and may cause you to be removed from the webinar. Today's chat monitor is Helen Duffy. Please direct a message to her if you have any concerns about comments that you see in the chat. Also, if you have a question for the speaker, please don't put your question in the chat or we may not see it. Instead, click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and place your question there. We'll select your questions from the Q&A to pose to the speaker. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be sent to all registrants within the next few days. When it's ready, it will also be posted on the website of the Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition, which is nicasolidarity.com, and also on its YouTube channel. Please hold the people of Ecuador in your thoughts today as they go through a second round of elections. If you'd like to become more active in supporting Nicaragua's sovereignty and opposing foreign interference there, please join the International Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition. You can check their website regularly for updates and new resources at nicasolidarity.com. You can also subscribe to the newsletter, monthly meetings, action alerts, and other notices from the Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition at bit.ly/NicaSubs. That will be posted in the chat. The next general meeting is tomorrow, Monday, April 14th. The coalition meets on the second Monday of each month at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you'd like to attend the meeting and you haven't received a notice as of now, you can request a Zoom contact or access by emailing Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition at gmail.com. We're also putting other links in the chat to subscribe to the NicaNet email list and Nica Notes and to download ebooks about Nicaragua. And now we turn to today's program. We'll hear from our featured speaker, Sarah Junkin Woodard, followed by a question and answer period. Please do keep entering your questions in the Q&A throughout the webinar. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our featured speaker, Sarah Junkin Woodard. Sarah has lived and worked in Nicaragua for the past 31 years for the project Center for Development in Nicaragua under the auspices of Jubilee House Community, which is a U.S. nonprofit that she helped to form in 1979. This webinar today is in conjunction with Sarah's tour of the United States, which began in February and still has a month to go. Welcome, Sarah Woodard. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you. I feel like I'm with the, speaking to the choir or something. Okay, can you see that? Barbara, nod. Can you see that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, great. Let me move myself out of the way. All right, there we go. So I am just delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. As you said, we are the Jubilee House Community, a nonprofit founded 46 years ago in North Carolina to work with the poor to help improve their lives. We remain steadfast in our commitment to the poor, and we continue to carry out this work through our project in Nicaragua, the Center for Development in Central America. We know that people here in the U.S. are feeling confused, uncertain, or scared, feeling helpless or consumed with trying to make things less bad for others. From Nicaragua, we have been watching events unfold in our native land here and wondering what can we possibly have to offer from 2,000 miles away. Then we realized that Nicaragua has weathered unimaginable forces, struggled against outside dominance, and has miraculously emerged resilient and reborn. And we realized that our organization has worked together with those suffering in poverty to struggle against systemic oppression for 46 years, with the last 31 of those working with the poor in Nicaragua, where at last we are seeing that the tide has begun to turn in favor of the poor. And so maybe there are insights that we can draw on from Nicaragua's experience and our own that may prove useful here, now, in the midst of the confusion. So in the spirit of sparking hope, we offer you today 5 insights from Nicaragua. First, touchstones of tenderness. Before the revolution in 1979, Nicaragua was ruled by the Somoza dictatorship. These were wealthy men, the billionaires of their time, educated at West Point and speaking more English than Spanish, installed and propped up by the U.S. in order to further U.S. business interests in the country. The Somozas enriched themselves and their cronies while impoverishing and exploiting the Nicaraguan people. Resistance to Somoza began to gain ground in the 1960s with the emergence of the Sandinista National Liberation Front, the FSLN. Among its founders was Tomás Borge, a leader who took his Christian faith and its demand for forgiveness of one's enemies seriously. Arrested, held as a political prisoner, and tortured, he was released in time to participate in the triumph of the Nicaraguan people, overthrowing the Somoza dictatorship in 1979. Tomás was able to forgive his former torturers, saying, "My personal revenge will be the right of your children to school and to flowers. Instead of jailing you, I intend for you to shake the sorrow from your eyes. When you, practitioner of torture, can no longer so much as lift your gaze, my personal revenge will be to offer you these hands you once maltreated without being able to make them forsake tenderness." It is thanks in part to Tomás Borge's testimony that today Nicaragua does not have the death penalty, and that decades ago Nicaraguans openly welcomed us as friends, even while struggling and continuing to struggle against the policies and sanctions our government puts on Nicaragua. In our work in Nicaragua, we've learned to allow tenderness in, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to be touched by the plight of others. And we let the poor be our touchstones. Is what we are doing of any use to the most vulnerable? If not, then it's simply not worth doing. Our work in healthcare is consistently the area where our hearts break the most, but it is also the area where we most tangibly feel that we are of use to the vulnerable. Decades ago, in 1994, when we began working in Nicaragua, in our conversations with communities, healthcare was always people's biggest worry. We responded by hosting medical brigades, and following Hurricane Mitch in 1998, set up a full-time health clinic in Nueva Vida, the refugee neighborhood set up on the edge of Ciudad Sandino. Over the past 25 years, this clinic has provided primary care and medicine to 15,000 patients annually, providing increasingly specialized care as the community's needs and priorities have changed, seeing an average of 70 patients a day in the areas of general medicine, dentistry, psychology, and with laboratory and pharmacy services. We collaborate with the National Ministry of Health, MINSA, to coordinate services and activities at a local level, focusing our work in areas not covered currently by MINSA's free and steadily improving services, improvements made after the current Sandinista government returned to office in 2007, even increasing through the COVID pandemic. And it's worth noting that 100% of Nicaraguans over the age of 2 are fully vaccinated against COVID. What are our goals in healthcare? To improve long-term health outcomes for Nicaraguans by ensuring access to quality and integral healthcare services, to improve understanding of health issues with a focus on educating younger patients in order to prevent disease and illness, and to provide opportunities for education to Nicaraguan and foreign students and health professionals. How are we achieving those goals? Well, we have a strong network of 30 lay health promoters in Nueva Vida and nearby rural villages who consistently visit patients in their homes, ensuring recovery, follow-up, and quality of life for patients. When patients need further follow-up within the public healthcare system, we provide emotional and practical support, with our health promoters accompanying patients in our vehicles to get them care quickly. We are focusing more on dental care. Did you know that regularly cleaning and repairing your teeth is fundamental to your lifelong overall health? In our local public health system in Nicaragua, only limited dental services are available. That is why we are teaching oral hygiene to instill good habits in children and ensuring access through our clinic to cleanings, sealants, fluoride treatments, and restorative dental care. We're using peer support groups to educate patients and community members about chronic illness, STIs, family planning, women's health, pregnancy, breastfeeding, early childhood development, and nutrition. We are rehabilitating the Green Pharmacy Garden and training health promoters and patients in natural medicine. We're helping foreign medical professionals learn from Nicaragua's free universal family and community healthcare model. We do this through hosting medical delegations and internships where volunteers learn from Nicaraguan medical professionals and contribute their volunteer skills, including in health fairs, minor surgery, and other specialized care. Community collaboration. Following the victory of the Sandinista Revolution in 1979, the people of Nicaragua threw themselves into the project of rebuilding their country. Almost immediately, however, the United States organized former National Guard members and wealthy Somoza exiled supporters into a proxy force known as the Contra, funding, training, and arming the Contras who attacked soft targets, torturing and brutally murdering literacy workers, farmers, nurses, teachers, pastors, and children. This continual aggression cost them 50,000 Nicaraguan lives over 10 years, while a U.S.-imposed economic blockade crippled the country. Yet in the midst of this crisis, Nicaragua created a new constitution. This constitution was not written in an air-conditioned boardroom. It was written by the people of Nicaragua in a series of countrywide consultation meetings where everyone from farmers to cleaning ladies had the opportunity to give their input to shape the Constitution. In this way, Nicaragua identified where the people wanted their country to go, fostering participatory democracy. Despite the ongoing war, during the 1980s revolutionary period, Nicaragua managed to redistribute land to poor farmers, teach its people to read and write, eradicate childhood illnesses, and offer its population free education and health care. In our work, we learned early on that solutions that do not start from within affected communities are not solutions at all. In order to succeed, all our projects arise out of needs identified by the community, work towards solutions that come from the communities themselves, and are carried out with active community participation. Today, Nicaragua's creative economy is driven by micro and small businesses, the majority owned and operated by women. But many lack the skills necessary to be successful and have asked for our help. What are our goals in community collaboration? To work with vulnerable populations to help them learn marketable skills that will directly improve their family's economy, and to create together a space where participants can feel comfortable and can reach their potential without the threat of discrimination. How do we achieve those goals? Well, through our Nueva Vida Clinic programs, in addition to previously offered classes, we're working with 2 new groups that have asked for our support to learn vocational skills with the goal of setting up their own businesses. The first group is Mamas con Metas, Moms with Goals, 25 moms of toddlers who need skills to set up a micro business they can run while continuing to look after their children at home. And they've just started their first class in event decoration because it's really important in Nicaragua to decorate for birthdays and quinceañeras and church events and all that sort of stuff. The second group is the LGBTQ community, in Nicaragua referred to as the sexual diversity community, with 25 members who requested a training program specifically for them. Many in the diversity community do not have the support of their families, often have spent periods of time as sex workers, struggled with addiction, and have been unable to receive an education. We're now working to raise the funds to set up the Divine Salon. The goal is to set up a high-end salon at a house that was donated to us in Managua, and you can see it's not in great shape. The roof leaks like a sieve. We've got to get the roof replaced, but the building itself is sturdy. So we're working to set up the salon there, and participants will learn salon theory and practice makeup and hairstyling with clients. Then once they have graduated, they will become mentors for the new class of participants, and income from the salon will help to finance the new classes, making the project economically sustainable. Additionally, we are continuing to work with our 80 at-risk youth in Nueva Vida with a focus on postponing parenthood, finishing high school, and receiving technical training or going to college. Classes cover a variety of topics, and this year the older ones are learning how to set up a business model for themselves and will do college visits. Feeding the fight. Leading up to the Nicaraguan election of 1990, the U.S. promised to continue its war unless the people elected the U.S.-backed candidate Violeta Chamorro. As a result, Nicaraguans went to the polls and chose peace, entering into a stark 16-year period of neoliberalism where the rich got richer and the poor got even poorer. The people of Nicaragua fell into a deep depression. Children begged for food at stoplights, and patients died outside of hospital for lack of medical care. And it was during this period that we began working in Nicaragua. Then in 2006, the FSLN was voted back into power. Their first act in government was to declare healthcare and education free again. And one of the first emblematic programs was called Zero Hunger. This hugely successful program gives women heads of households a pregnant cow, chickens, feed, and seeds, contributing to Nicaragua now achieving 90% food sovereignty. The understanding is that you can't have a true democracy when people are hungry. They will always vote whichever way they believe will fill their children's bellies. We have also learned that there's a long way to go. La lucha es larga, and that there is only one place to start, meeting people where they are. First, helping people meet their basic needs. You want to live to fight another day, you've got to be fed today. So we're working on feeding the fight in a very real way through sustainable agriculture. What are our goals in feeding the fight? To teach and provide replicable models of sustainable food production and good nutrition, and to support rural coffee cooperatives in achieving the development goals their communities identify. How are we achieving these goals? To date, we've set up 57 small-scale aquaponic systems in homes and schools in both rural and urban areas of Ciudad Sandino. We've trained family members and teachers to maintain these systems, which grow fish and plants in a closed system. And this is just the coolest project ever. Tilapia fish are grown in a tank. The dirty water from the fish is pumped up into a bed where the plants receive the nutrition from the fish. Clean water then gravity feeds back into the fish tank, oxygenating the water for the fish. Each system is capable of growing up to 100 pounds of fish and several hundred pounds of vegetables every 6 months in a space that is 2 meters square. These systems have been so successful that 60 families have applied to receive an aquaponic system, for which we are seeking funding. building on the experience gained by the most successful systems from the first phase of the project. And the bottom left-hand corner there is Domingo's. You can see he has filled up his entire yard with a giant fish tank. He's raising baby fish for the new families. And the top left-hand picture has a plant in it called insulina, which you can brew a few leaves of it in a tea, and it's helping to control diabetes sugar levels. This is fabulous. Anyway, carrying on. We're collaborating with the Nicaraguan Fisheries Institute to provide further training and technical assistance as well. We also support 2 organic and fair trade coffee cooperatives to help them export their product to the U.S., where our Project Farmer Shares ships delicious roasted coffee to monthly subscribers. And you can buy a pound or subscribe to buy monthly, and your purchase supports more than 300 families. At the Organic El Porvenir Co-op that the U.S. has worked with for 25 years, these members have owned and worked their land collectively. And newly included this year, Las Diosas is a women's-led cooperative that uses agroecological methods. These resilient women have overcome systemic oppression and domestic violence to create a thriving community, working in areas once considered exclusively men's work. Strengthening solidarity. Even before the revolution succeeded, the FSLN wrote out its vision for Nicaragua in its historical program. Today, this 1969 document continues to guide the work of Nicaragua's government. One of the main points of the document is solidarity among the peoples of the world, including the peoples of the United States, which has been the constant and historical aggressor of Nicaragua. Saying that the FSLN has vowed to support the struggle of all the people of the United States for genuine democracy and equal rights. Nicaraguans feel a great kinship with the people of the U.S. Throughout the 1980s, when the U.S.-funded Contra War was filling up Nicaragua's graveyards, Nicaraguans were always able to separate the people of the United States from the policies of the U.S. government. In fact, not only were solidarity workers welcomed in Nicaragua, but solidarity of U.S. citizens was a critical support during the Contra War, with Ben Linder as a well-known example. A clown unicyclist and engineer from Portland, Oregon, Ben was targeted and killed by the Contra while working on a small hydroelectric project to bring electricity to a rural town. Whenever we talk about Nicaragua here in the U.S. and the work that we do there, we get asked many questions. The best answer we can give is, come see for yourself. As liberation theologian Fray Beto said, the head thinks where the feet stand. In other words, the best way to understand something is to see it with your own eyes. What are our goals in solidarity? While all areas of our work in Nicaragua include education, the specific focus of our education program is to educate people from the global north here about realities in Nicaragua. The goal of this education is to build solidarity for Nicaragua through the creation of shared understanding and support for the Nicaraguan people. How are we achieving these goals? Well, the Casa Ben Linder is our education, art, and solidarity center in Managua. The spacious guest house hosts volunteers, groups, and gatherings, as well as organizing tours and classes. This year in 2025, we have 6 delegations that have been planned, including 2 medical ones. We also host individual volunteer medical professionals to learn medical Spanish or just regular Spanish. In February, we had the Bird Brigade, Birding in Solentinami. In March, Power and Protagonism, Women in Nicaragua. In June, Global Health, Family and Community Health in Nicaragua. In July will be Solidarity in Action, Nicaragua's Popular Revolution. In November, Salud y Solidaridad, Hands-on Healthcare in Nicaragua. And we don't have a date for this one yet, but co-ops and communities, cooperative movement in Nicaragua. So please come join us. And finally, fostering flexibility. Nicaragua is not afraid to evolve as needs change. Today, it is often said that the Nicaraguan people are revolutionary and evolutionary, tweaking programs for improvement or even scrapping them altogether in favor of a better way, while keeping the national focus in consultation with all those involved. For example, last year in 2024, the Ministry of Education spent 6 months consulting with teachers, parents, students, and administrators at all levels of public education around the country in order to completely rewrite its national education strategy. And we know from our 31 years of community development work in Nicaragua that needs and priorities change as the country changes. For example, in 1998, Ciudad Sandino received 12,000 refugees from Hurricane Mitch, and a new neighborhood of Nueva Vida was formed with no housing, roads, electricity, water, or health care for its residents. We began to work in this barrio at its inception, where our clinic is today. Then, in 2007, the Sandinista government came back into power with the political will to improve lives of poor Nicaraguans, a will that had not been seen in the previous neoliberal governments, reducing poverty by 23.4% in just the past 18 years. Healthcare and education have been made free again. Infrastructure has improved with roads, renewable electricity, and potable water. And when you get potable water and electricity, you can do aquaponics. We are excited to see the lives of those with whom we work tangibly improving in such a short time. It is truly remarkable progress. But there is much work to still be done in Ciudad Sandino and Nueva Vida in particular. As the situation for the people of Nicaragua has shifted, our flexibility has been needed in response as well, including responding quickly to disasters. For example, in 2020, we had not planned on 2 Category 5 hurricanes, but they came anyway, back to back, one after another in the space of 2 weeks. We used our flexibility to respond, providing emergency hygiene kits, clothes, and supplies to families temporarily displaced in the North Caribbean coast, and seeds for farmers to replant. More recently, we received the donation of that house in Managua. We responded with flexibility, donating tables and chairs to preschools, using them for trainings, and setting up the used computers for educational opportunities for the young people, the Lobos and Leones. Meanwhile, using functioning areas of the building to develop a high-end salon reputation in preparation for the Divine Project, and teaching space for theater classes, generating some project income. So who carries out all this work? Original founders, board members, current staff, and dedicated supporters. The day-to-day work of the project is carried out by 17 full-time Nicaraguan staff members, 3 part-time volunteers, 3 part-time staff, 5 full-time volunteers, and a host of part-time interns and volunteers working with the Fab Five, the younger generation of the permanent Jubilee House community. We can't build sustainable communities without you. None of this work is possible without people like you outside our organization who believe in what we're trying to accomplish and who offer support. So we still do need your help. How? Well, we need you to donate your time to come to Nicaragua, learn, and contribute to our hands-on work. Share our message through presentations, newsletters, blogs, and social media with friends and family to increase support for this work. Pray for us. Donate your time long distance or here in the U.S. I'm traveling now with a borrowed car. People put me up overnight. Some folks have paid for some of my airplane hops with their frequent flyer miles. What are your skills and resources? Find out how we can use them. And also, we do still need you for your grassroots financial support to make regular donations, to set up recurring donations online, donating stock, donating your IRA required minimum distribution, or don't kick the bucket, but put us in your will. We know that life is in turmoil here in the U.S. The very landscape of how to be in the struggle with the poor around the world is changing every day. But we also know that good change can happen when we pull together wherever we are, when we recognize and offer touchstones of tenderness, commit to community collaboration, deal with the basics to feed the fight, strengthen solidarity as we build networks across boundaries, always moving as needs change, fostering flexibility. Won't you join us? Won't you continue to join us? This tiny planet spinning in space needs us, each of us, and we are not alone. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you for this inspiring presentation. It's just amazing how much your project has achieved over the past 31 years, I guess, in Nicaragua.
31 years, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'd like to start with a couple of comments and then pose a question of my own before moving on to other people's. Um,
Let
I,
me say one thing real fast. If you want to get our quarterly newsletter and you're not already getting it, I need your name and your email in the chat. It doesn't cost us anything to send it by email, and we don't bombard your email box. We only send it by email 5 times a year. So we'd love to have you join us if you're not already on the list. So carry on. Yes.
we have already posted that request several times while you were talking, but you didn't get to see it. So yeah, do that to keep in touch with this project. Um, I would like to draw a connection for a moment between this webinar and the last one, which took place 6 weeks ago today, which featured Brian Wilson. Brian, when he was in Vietnam, had an experience in which he saw the effects of war on the people of Nicaragua. And in one particular experience, he looked at a woman who was in a village that had been destroyed. And he looked at her, and suddenly he had some kind of a spiritual experience in which he said, "You are my sister." And it was like a deep connection that he felt connected to her and connected to everyone. And so an interesting thing that happened then following that for me the other day was I happened to see Brian's book called Blood on the Tracks, which he had signed for me back in 2011. And I opened it up to read the inscription, which said, "Barbara, we are all one." And I was touched by that today in hearing your presentation, Sarah, because the first of your 5 different principles that you mentioned is a touch of tenderness. And I'm thinking to myself that it's the bonds of love among people and everything in our world that are the strongest bonds. They're stronger, they can overcome everything else. And it's so inspiring that Nicaragua and the people of Nicaragua have realized that for a very long time. And so that's why they're showing strength today. Whereas, for example, in the United States, we're having a bit of trouble because we're not bonded the way we should be. We're not seeing one another as all one. So that's just a comment that I think follows very closely on your presentation. Okay, so following that up with then the first question, your nonprofit, while it's doing very impressive things, is not the only nonprofit in Nicaragua. There are a number of nonprofits who are working, and they're also doing, many of them are doing good things as well. And at the same time, the Nicaraguan government is also gradually achieving a great deal. And so my question, I guess, for you is, how does your nonprofit coordinate with the Nicaraguan government in terms of the services you're providing so that you're not duplicating and so forth?
So, when after Hurricane Mitch, we first started the clinic in Nueva Vida in all that. That was, that was during the neoliberal years, and the government was doing nothing for people. So we were doing all the first, medical people were treating folks with whatever medicine they had in their suitcases, that sort of thing, and gradually grew into the clinic. But we were providing primary care because it wasn't available elsewhere. Now the national public system is providing primary care in general. And so we are shifting out of so much primary care sending people on to their public health providers, and we are focusing more on the education kind of thing, so that the education programs with the Lobos and Leones, the pregnant women, the newborn women, the toddler women, all those are education things out of our clinic. But if you come into the clinic with, a fever and the sniffles, you're being sent on to the national public health system because they are now prepared to take care of that. Another example, women can come to us and we will take PAPs, and then we will pay for them to be read well at a trustworthy lab in Managua. Most women come back with clear PAP results, but cervical cancer is a serious issue in Nicaragua. And if a woman comes back with a problem on her PAP, we can then take that PAP result and her to the public health, to wherever her provider is in the public health system. And they can then follow up on that with biopsies or whatever treatment is needed. But that way it's gotten caught early when it can actually do some good. Whereas if she waited until she was having serious, painful issues with it, it would be very late for catching cervical cancer. So we're trying to do those kinds of things, and we're going to focus more on dental care now because there's not much of that in the public health system. And those kinds of things we're adjusting as it goes along. But what the government is doing now is they are asking for NGO projects to be under the auspices of some department, some part of the government. So, for example, our clinic has for many, many years been under MINSA, under the National Health Ministry. And the aquaponics is working with the Fisheries Institute. And these things are getting matched up so that the public sector also knows what we're offering, and we know what the public sector is offering, and we can overlap as little as possible. Did that answer the question? Maybe?
Thank you. Nan?
Yeah, I'm going to sort of combine two question comments. Daniel Shea is asking whether you'll be in Portland, Oregon, and he's given his phone number and email, and I put in the chat that he needs to put all that in the chat and that you will receive the chat so that you can respond to him. And then Robin Cash asks, are your webinars posted for later viewing? I have friends who will be interested. Thanks.
So are you posting them for public viewing?
Yes, the answer is yes on that. It should be available within the next few days via email to anybody who registered for the webinar. And it will also be on the YouTube channel of Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition.
And I'm sorry, I'm not going to be in Oregon on this trip. Becca gets there sometimes, but right this minute she's doing a family visit with her parents in Idaho. I don't think she's going to or from. I think she's just trying to travel and see her parents. Her dad's health is not terribly wonderful. But we do make it to Oregon sometimes, and I'm happy to Zoom with people in Oregon on this trip if we can make that work out. So I'll check the chat for information.
Thank you.
And we need more questions.
Yes, we do. I have another question of my own that I can offer while we're waiting for more questions from others. And that is, you mentioned the project of working now with a community of LGBTQ plus folks in your area. And I'm wondering, are there similar projects or groups in other parts of the country that you know of? And also, is there pushback on this from the larger community, pushback on the projects, or is the project accepted with very little pushback?
I don't know about in the rest of Nicaragua. I know that this particular group of folks in our area, maybe there's pushback and maybe not. It may be kind of like, in the old days when you lived in the valley and that was crazy Uncle Joe, but he was our crazy Uncle Joe. So he was, he was fine. I don't know if it's that sort of thing. But these folks have been part of our lives and work for a long time. They've put dances on when we've had parties at the clinic and things like that. You know, they've done drag things and stuff that's been really fun. So I don't know. I think that they haven't all been accepted by their families. They have not all been, welcomed in their own home communities. But they have bonded together into this group, and they know that they as a group are accepted at the clinic and in our work, and that's how we know them. So Becca can give you a better answer than I can. She's traveling today though, so she's not on this webinar.
Thank you, Nan.
Yeah, you did some of this before, but Martin Roger asks, can you comment on some of the recent changes in Ciudad Sandino? And I'm sure he also means Nueva Vida.
How far back do you want me to go? Nueva Vida has electricity now. Nueva Vida has city water now. It does not have sewage yet, but Ciudad Sandino has said publicly, announced that sewage is in the works for some time in the future. The problem with that is that the sewage treatment area is higher in altitude than the land of Nueva Vida, so it makes it complicated to get sewage to it. Kids are going to school. You see many fewer kids out in the streets. There's free Wi-Fi in the parks, so you go by the parks and you think the teenage gang members are hanging out at the parks. Actually, they've parked their bicycles and they're sitting on the curb and they're checking the free Wi-Fi and doing Facebook or studying for their classes or whatever on free Wi-Fi in the public parks. And that sort of thing are the kind of changes that have happened. Ciudad Sandino Hospital now is a functioning hospital. When we got there in 94, the doctors didn't have Band-Aids, alcohol, aspirin, anything. And it also has cataract surgery at the Ciudad Sandino Hospital. People who come now as volunteers who came 10 or 15 years ago, they cannot believe it. It's just phenomenal. Roads are getting improved. The mayor's office, when they choose when they're going to pave one of the little dirt streets, they start first by putting in sidewalks, which I think is fabulous. You get the walking people out of the mud before you pave the street. That sort of thing. Is that what we're looking for here? Or is there some other focus?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Some other questions are coming in. Here's a good one, a more general one. How is the United States continuing to undermine the revolution in Nicaragua?
Okay. All right, here we go. Well, first of all, the State Department has kept the travel advisory at a 3. And we used to have university groups that would come down every January and every spring break with 25 young adults, and they would learn about Nicaragua and they would go back to their universities and out into the world with some firsthand experience. The State Department's put the travel advisory at a 3, and the universities won't authorize student groups coming with a level 3 travel advisory, and so all of those groups got canceled, got stopped. Financially, it costs us $50,000 a year when those groups don't come. And so that has been a serious financial issue for us. So just the idea that the State Department keeps grinding out the same old rhetoric that is just not true about Nicaragua, that also means that is the rhetoric that, like, a new person in the House of Representatives or a new senator, where are they going to get their information from? They're getting it from the State Department. And it's the same old garbage. Our administrations in the US they're getting their education from the State Department, and it's the same old garbage. So none of those people are coming to Nicaragua to see what Nicaragua is really like. And that is a huge impact and huge detriment on Nicaragua in general. The U.S. is also continuing to put sanctions on Nicaragua, and they're very vaguely worded. They say things like, oh, this sanction's going to be in effect until Nicaragua becomes more democratic. Well, what? I mean, Nicaragua has regularly scheduled elections. You're automatically registered to vote when you're 16. A huge percentage of the population actually turns on and votes. All of the parties have poll watchers and report it as being a fairly reported election results. And a huge percentage of the people that vote continue to vote for, since 2006, continue to vote for the Sandinistas to get reelected. Well, the poor people go, my life is better. My kids can go to school. I have water. I have electricity. You know, I can get my farm crops out to market now because there's a bridge, you know, all that kind of stuff. And rich people go, I can make money faster if the infrastructure's good. So people are voting for the party. And what folks in the US don't understand is that Nicaraguans vote for a party. They don't vote for a single individual. They vote for the party, and they say, regardless of whether they gripe and moan and carry on about any individual in the administration, they are voting for the party over and over again because their lives are better, and everybody knows it. So as long as the U.S. continues to put sanctions and talk about Nicaragua being needing to be more democratic, but they don't say, you know, compared to what? Pot calling the kettle? I mean, really, you know, it's crazy. And I better not say any more.
Thank you.
I have a question. I know your groups are so important because I've known many people who've gone on them. How does someone find out more about the possibility of going to Nicaragua with one of your groups?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so Casa Benjamin Linder has its own website, and there are groups on it, or you can start with our own website, JHC-CDCA.org. Nan or Barbara, can you put one of those in the chat for me, please? And it will
Yes.
have
Say
links.
it again.
What?
Sam again.
Well, one of them is Casa Ben Linder and one is Casa Benjamin Linder, and I can't even remember which one's which, but they'll both get you to us. And you can just start with ours, JHC-CDCA.org, and look in it for education and educational opportunities that will get you to there. If you want to come on any of the delegations that are posted there, you email and set it up to join and pay your deposit and come. If you want to organize a group to bring your own church family or your Rotary Club or your, you know, rowdy friends or whoever on your own, you just email back and forth and set up your own dates and when you can come. We can take up to 25 people at a time on a delegation. You have to get yourself to Managua, and from there you pay a per diem that covers your room and board and transportation and honorariums for speakers and all that kind of stuff. And we get you back to the airport at the end. And normally groups start maybe on a Saturday, and that's your travel day. Sunday is your Managua, find out you're in a different country, the capital, some history, get your feet on the ground, right side up, that sort of stuff. Monday through Friday, you participate in some way, and it depends on the focus of your group as to what that is going to be. Saturday is then a play day, see the countryside, have a day to sort of absorb everything you've learned and experienced. And then Sunday, you fly home again. That's kind of the usual, but people can arrange their groups any way they want. And we do that over email. Please come. Absolutely, please come. We also, I should also say, it's fine for families to come. Anybody under 18 needs to have somebody on the group who can be their, you know, legal parent person. But it's fine for families to bring smaller children, all of that.
Barbara?
I'm trying to get back to my questions. Just a second. I was so busy posting things in the chat. Oh, shoot.
Shall I go ahead?
Do you have one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you speak more about the important time of the conservative restoration and then the return of Daniel Ortega and the Revolutionary Party? I feel like there are deep lessons there for those of us who hope to make revolution elsewhere. What are your reflections and the lessons you think people should learn from that time? You already answered a lot of that.
I first visited Nicaragua with a Witness for Peace delegation, and traveled in Nicaragua with family during the time of the Contra War. And Nicaraguans were a people of hope. You felt the hope everywhere, and you felt the welcome of, you came to find out about us and to understand, and you are not your government. And that was just incredibly powerful to me, that they weren't, locking me up for being a US citizen during the time of the Contra War. When we went back to Nicaragua, when we moved there in 94, Nicaragua was in really bad shape. Violeta Chamorro had done her job of appealing to the rich and powerful, and everything had stopped for the poor. Farmers couldn't get loans, people weren't getting electricity, kids weren't going to school. It was a mess. And you felt the despair in people. And it was really hard for folks to still have hope. They had won the revolution, they had made it work, they had gotten their, all this stuff had happened. And then in 1990, it just all came to a screeching halt. And it was really, really hard. In 2006, when the FSLN was reelected and back into power, and there's lots of stuff about all that time period in between, people who think that the Sandinistas sold their soul, there's all this and that and the other, but they managed to stay enough as a fingers in the political pie, you might say, so that they got reelected in 2006. And when they came into office in 2007, things started to change again for the poor. And it has been phenomenal. It has just been phenomenal. And people go, wow, look, we can do this again. And, Lobos and Leones in Nueva Vida, stay in school, graduate from high school, and you can go on through university, and it is all for free. And, and people are realizing the reality of this, and being entrepreneurs and making things happen. And the contrast between those years of when Hurricane Mitch hit, the president wouldn't even declare it to be a national emergency, because he said, if people outside Nicaragua give money to the NGOs in Nicaragua to bail out folks in the hurricane, we're not going to be able to tax any of that. So they refused to declare a national emergency after Hurricane Mitch. When people in communities on the Caribbean coast who had not voted for that party during the election were up and had their kids tied up in trees to keep them from falling out and drowning in the floodwater, the helicopters flew over and didn't rescue them. Yeah, it was terrible. It was blatantly obvious of what was going on, and people felt it. And the change now is, there's no way to describe it except that everybody who comes feels it and feels the change.
Sarah, I'm going to try to combine a couple of questions, one sort of on the small side, and then a more general one. What happened to the Nueva Vida sewing factory, which I remember because of some t-shirts you made, and the fair trade store that was in Casa Ben Linder? And then a broader question, which is, could you say more about the kind of relations that you maintain with the relevant government ministries? You already spoke to that a bit, but anything more about how you maintain those relations?
The maintaining of relations is a lot of paperwork. It is a huge amount of paperwork, and some NGOs have not been able to produce that paperwork to dot those I's and cross those T's. Our own position is that we are in good standing in Nicaragua. We do all the paperwork. We moan and groan and complain about it, but we do all the paperwork, and it works, and it's received. The answer about the clothing thing is they decided that they wanted to be on their own, and they decided they wanted to go out on their own. And when they did, they no longer kept up the quality control that was required for the high-end organic purchasers in the US. And so they lost that business. That left them making t-shirts, but not much else except for t-shirts. And their cooperative gradually fizzled. There are still some folks in that building making some t-shirts of one sort or another, but they asked us, we want to be on our own. We don't want to have you helping us anymore. And we honored that, and they have not been able to continue to flourish like they were there for a while.
Thanks. Nan, do you have anything?
I don't see, well, maybe as a last question, do the Chamorros still have the only newspaper in Nicaragua?
And perhaps you could, if you wouldn't mind, Sarah, just add to that anything that you see about the general state of media in Nicaragua. Is it all on the left or on the right or whatever? Any comments?
I don't know about newspapers. Everybody's doing stuff online. So I don't know what else. There's all kinds of stuff online, but I don't know if you would call all those things newspapers or not. So I don't know how to answer the Chamorro question. I think that since the coup attempt in 2018, Nicaragua has been very careful about who can say what in public, because they understand completely the power of bad information. And lots of stuff that wasn't even Nicaragua, it was images from other countries, were put out as if it was all happening in Nicaragua during that coup attempt time. And so they're very careful about who can say what. And that is taken by many people as a, you can't say what you think. I don't feel like it is, you can't say what you think. I do think you can't say treasonous remarks and get away with it. And there's a difference between saying, you know, the sky is blue and I think we should do everything we can to make the sky green. You know, I mean, there's a difference between liking or not liking some action or talking about it or expanding it or working to change it and saying we need to throw somebody out. And one is acceptable and one isn't. I think that they are paying a lot of attention to that, and some people don't appreciate that. But on the other hand, I understand the US and influence from here tried to overthrow the government in 2018. And the US has the ability to do that again if the US chooses to, and they know it. And they are doing their very, very best to protect their country.
Just to follow up, Sarah, to make sure I understand your answer. So if there are people in the country who say something in terms of possibly disagreeing with a government policy, is that also not allowed, are you saying? Or is that different from saying we should just throw out the government?
I'm not sure as to what level that would be true. I am a US citizen. I don't vote in Nicaragua. It's not my job to change anything in Nicaragua. It's the Nicaraguan people's job to do what they want in Nicaragua. But what I would say is how you complain or how you object is, I think, the important thing. I say up here, we should have democracy. I say up here, I would like to get rid of the electoral college. Okay, that's not a treasonous remark. On the other hand, I don't say we should take up arms against so-and-so, whoever. I think it's how you express wanting Nicaragua to move forward or in a different direction rather than what. And I'm not a very good person to answer that question.
Well, Nan, I think, wants to answer also.
Good, Nan, you jump in there.
Yeah, I think it's a difference. It's perfectly fine to complain about anything. I mean, to say, I don't think Danielle should be the president. He's too old. I don't like Rosario. I think this ministry is not doing a good job. You can say anything. The part that you can't do is commit treason, is organize with other people to overthrow the government, and in particular with US money and support, or money and support from a foundation or from another country.
Okay. Well, we have answered all the questions except for one personal one, which we'll convey to Sarah privately. So at this point, I think we're ready to begin closing down the webinar and thank everyone for attending. At this point, if either Nan or Sarah have last comments, this is a good time to offer those.
Just thank you, everybody. Hang in there.
Thank
Okay.
you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. This was an interesting webinar, and thank you everyone for attending.
Bye.
Bye.